Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Hype Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning, good Christmas Eve morning to you. We appreciate you being here with us in the Junk Be Gone studios for today's edition of the Sports Source. We're going to be talking Tennessee football start to finish today. Tons of Tennessee football, all in a holiday theme. And if you're looking at this coat and you're thinking, he's dressed like an idiot, that's the point. We're gonna have Christmas fun today. So I'm glad to say this isn't the loudest thing you're going to see on the set today, but we're going to have fun. I do appreciate you joining us today. Let's go ahead and show you what's on Santa's list for the program. We're going to talk about the fall signing class. We're going to talk about the impact, the real impact of NIL. We all expected a huge change. What has been the real impact of NIL on recruiting? Transfer strategy at Tennessee, that's kind of interesting. Where does Joe Milton rank among the Tennessee quarterbacks of the 2000s? We will rank Tennessee's most recent bowls to see which is the most important. SEC bowl games, we'll talk about what's coming up on the SEC schedule, keys to the Citrus Bowl, and much, much more. This first segment of our program, as always, our sponsors, I just want to say all of them, thanks to them from me, but also all of them say thanks to you for your support over the year. They do this every year in our Christmas show, just kind of send along their holiday wishes. And certainly the folks at Junk Be Gone, Mike Such and his family, they wish you season's greetings and a great Christmas from just a great locally owned company. And that's me saying that, not them saying that. JunkBeGone.biz to learn more, but we appreciate them and all of our sponsors for bringing you our Christmas Eve show today. All right. Let's welcome in the guys. Right over here, we have Chuck Cavaleris. We have Ryan Callahan right here. We have Mike Stoll. Wow.
I can't wait to see the loudest shirt on
I think you win.
No, there's more.
And there we got Will Overstreet right there. We do have a poll question for you today. You got to get in early, though, because we're only doing it for half the show. But let's go ahead and put up the poll question. How do you feel about Tennessee's signing class? God bless us, everyone, or bah humbug? You tell us. You got to take your smartphone, click it on that QR code right there, or you can go to sportsource.tv/polls. Click it and give us your answer. Let us know if it's a bah humbug, this signing class, or if you're saying God bless us, everyone. We'll follow that up and bring the results midway through the show. All right. I want to start talking about the recruiting class, the signing class that just got finished. And Ryan, of course, covers recruiting for GoVols247.com. So let's show the 24/7 Sports composite rankings to start this thing. There you go. Tennessee in the Tennessee Orange is number 13 in the nation. Not bad. But that peach color, well, those are all SEC schools. And you see Oklahoma and Texas, they're in the SEC now. 10 of the top 20 teams in the country are in the SEC. Tennessee, 13th in the nation, 7th in the SEC, and we'll get around to whether or not that's good enough in just a second. But Ryan, let me start. Biggest presence under Josh Heupel's tree in this class. Who are the big gets?
Well, let's start with the 5 stars. It'd be weird if we didn't, right? Mike Matthews and Jordan Ross, 5-star wide receiver. Mike Matthews out of the Atlanta area, big-time playmaker, guy Tennessee beat some really good programs for: Clemson, USC, Georgia. Obviously a big one. Jordan Ross, edge rusher. They keep stacking talent at that position. They've done a really nice job at that spot. So beating out Texas and then also Florida and Georgia among the finalists for him. I would throw in a couple position groups in addition to that. Yeah. Offensive line is maybe the best thing about this class to me. They finally addressed that position in a meaningful way. 5 offensive linemen, potentially a 6th in Jeremiah's Hurd. Okay. So they've got a big offensive line group, a few 4 stars among them. So that's a big get for this class. And then also in the secondary, a good job again. A couple 4-star corners in state, and Marcus Gorey and Caleb Beasley, guys I think will play a lot of football for them. So second year in a row, a pretty good secondary class. That's a place they sometimes struggled to recruit in the past.
We'll talk about the secondary a little later when we get to our transfer segment. Yep. Let me ask you though. You mentioned areas that were filled. In terms of stockings that didn't get stuffed, which stockings were empty in terms of positions that they didn't hit where they needed to, in your opinion?
So in grading classes these days, I have a tough time with this because I don't dock teams as much for this, but it's still something you have to take into account. But it's easy enough to patch these things up in the transfer portal now that I don't think it's a huge deal when you're assessing these classes. But a little short at tight end, could have used 2 in this class, only got 1. a little short at wide receiver. I'm shocked they only signed 2. They needed 3 or 4 probably. A little bit short at corner. They missed Jaron Sensabaugh, an in-state target on Tuesday. He picked Missouri over Tennessee. And then defensive line. They missed out on some really big targets this summer they spent a lot of time on. Never really fully addressed that position. Got a junior college guy, Jamal Wallace, late. So could have used one more there, and mainly could have used more quality on the defensive line.
In-state receiver they lost to Missouri. Okay.
Or cornerback.
Cornerback. Mike, let's turn that into the question for everybody else. Was this recruiting class good enough? Because if you're losing a guy you want to Missouri, an in-state player, you just came off an Orange Bowl. You were 11-2. You've been in town 3 years. I don't know what the priority was on this kid for them, but just as an example, you're 13th out of 20, 7th in the SEC. Mike Stoll, is that good enough?
I'm not sure. And I think the reason I answer that
We need a definitive
the definitive answer is no. I would say no, not good enough. Now, you take into fact, though, you look at Georgia and Alabama. Like, Tennessee's miles away from them. We know that. Now, we fooled with Alabama a little bit. But you look at the other ones ahead of them. Now that you expanded the 12-team playoff, you're like, okay, am I going to be worried about, Oklahoma? Am I going to worry about Texas? Yes, right? So where along, other than those top 2, how do we fit in? I don't know if we can make enough ground up to get in that 12-man playoff, which you want to do.
Good enough?
I think they got to be in the top 10. I don't think you necessarily are going to say I've got to be at 1 and 2 and 3 because it's also the development. A lot of these players you're going to strike out on. They're going to show up. They're not going to be the guy you thought they were. They're going to be somebody else. And you're going to lose some in the transfer portal, let's face it. So you are going to be able to pick people up out of that way. So, but I think consistently getting a little bit higher in those rankings in the top 10 puts you in the game more. So I don't think they missed by a whole lot in my mind just looking at it by being a little bit outside, but you would still like to see them single digits, top 10. That feels a little bit better to me about where you turned out.
Chuck,
Yeah, it seemed like it was 1 or 2 players away from really being what you get the momentum moving forward, right? And at least with the wide receiver, they picked up in the portal, the Tulane kids, so that helps. But when you look at it, 13, on your point, Will, I don't think you can have a whole lot of misses when you're ranked like that. I think you got to have more hits and more contributors early, and we don't know that.
Well, the big thing is you can't miss on offensive line.
Yeah.
If you miss on defensive line, then go to offensive line. If you miss on the offensive line, then there's no place to go except the bench or the guy that gets hurt after every extra point. That's the only spot. So you really can't miss if that's your big set of team and people. So that's going to be the most interesting part about this of did you come up good on those?
Ryan, I looked at this. Tennessee, I believe, you had 2 5-stars. I wanted to see, and this was a little before the signing day was finalized. This might have been Wednesday or Thursday I looked. But I wanted to see how many other schools in the country had 2 5-stars. There are only 11 in the country that had 2 5-stars at that point. 8 of them are in the SEC, so 7 others with Tennessee. How far away was this Tennessee? I mean, look, you guys put the ranking out. Everybody puts a ranking out. I just put them on the screen. It's what we do. Right. We all act like it's handed down from Moses on Mount Sinai.
On the tablet.
But the reality is, those rankings aren't perfect. We don't know who's going to hit or not. But how far away were they? What's the difference between 13 and 10, for example? Is it a player, as Chuck suggested? Is it 2 players? What's the difference?
That's exactly where I was going with this because I took our class calculator where you can kind of mess around with these different scenarios, and a couple days before signing day I plugged in Jordan Seaton, the 5-star offensive tackle that Tennessee missed out on, picked Colorado, ended up sticking with them after some late drama. At that time Tennessee was 14th. Adding him alone would have moved them up to 8th. So 13 to 7 with a guy like that is possible because Auburn was not that far ahead of Tennessee and they finished 7th. So just looking at it this morning, Texas 26 points ahead of Tennessee, number 3 class in the country. That's not a huge gap. You're talking 3 players maybe between Texas and Tennessee. Also, Tennessee only signed 21 players. Hard to sign a top 10 class with 21.
How much of that is the NCAA stuff?
No, that's not at all. They missed out on a few guys in this class, so they would have liked to end up around 25 and just didn't get there with the way things fell. But yeah, they had some misses, and that made it harder for them to finish in the top 10. And yeah, this class is, you can look at it either way. They had some noticeable misses that just were, it's hard not to look past them in this class, but also some really good players. 11 4-stars in the 24/7 Sports Composite, 2 5-stars. 13 out of 21 that are 4 or 5-stars. So,
well, when was the last time Tennessee had 11 4-stars?
And to that point, 2 5-stars, first time since 2015 Tennessee's done that. So you're clearly doing a really good job. First time in 8 years to do that, or 9 years.
Time to coach them up, boys.
Bah humbug. All right, you tell us, humbug, or God bless us, everyone. When we come back, NIL was supposed to change everything. It was supposed to open all kinds of doors for Tennessee, other schools. What has been the actual impact? I've gone back and looked up the last 10 years. We'll show you what the impact was. Come on back on the Sports Source.